What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, not continuing my deep dive, doing a short little dive into the two albums of UK, the PROG supergroup of the late 70s that only put out two studio albums. The Zappa connection, and the reason I'm doing it, Eddie Jobson is in both versions of the band. He was on both albums. Currently, elsewhere on the channel, I'm doing a deep dive into Zappa's Winter 77 tour. Jobson was on that tour. Trying to cover all the Jobson bands since I'm doing Jobson in 77. Also, Terry Bozzio, drummer for Frank Zappa, is the drummer on the second UK album. The first UK album had Bill Bruford. I've already done King Crimson elsewhere, done Yes elsewhere. Wetton, who would go on and form Asia, done King Crimson elsewhere. Jobson, and Alan Holdsworth is on the first album. Kind of probably the one person who had the lowest profile of these three members, I would say, going into the first album, right? I don't think he was as well recognized as the other three. And unfortunately, there's not enough of him. We definitely need more Alan Holdsworth on that first album. Holdsworth and Bruford would leave for the second album, and Terry Bozzio would join and be the drummer. And apparently they auditioned, or they were looking for a guitar player. Apparently Steve Vai was one of the people who auditioned, and they did not go with him. So the second album does not have a guitar player. It's just Bozzio, Wetton, and Jobson. I'm going to rank these two in order of my personal favorite. I'm not going to drop a list at the end of the video because there's only two albums, and you should be able to remember that. And if you don't remember it, you're not even going to remember what video you're watching, right? So it doesn't matter. My least favorite of the two is their second album, Danger Money, the one with Terry Bozzio. I just think it's only 6 songs. It's really maybe a little less ambitious than the first one. Bozzio's approach to the drumming is completely different than Bill Bruford. So there's that, though Bozzio was not bad. But there's a lot more sort of bigger, dramatic, like epic, couple wannabe epic prog moments on the Bozzio album than there are on the Bruford album. 6 songs. This came out in 1979. 2 of them are indulgently proggy, and those are the best 2 songs on the album. 3 songs on side A. The last song, The Only Thing She Needs, is just your indulgently proggy, kind of super funky, super percussion led, kind of that herky-jerky, kind of a mix between like some of Jethro Tull's more complicated stuff and maybe slightly less chaotic versions of like Gentle Giant stuff. So maybe a little King Crimson type stuff in there. Also contains a really good synth solo, kind of a longer stretched out, let Jobson do his thing. The final song on the album, Carrying No Cross, also has like a proggy middle section, has a nice long synth solo in there. I think those are the 2 better songs on the album. The opening song, Danger Money, which is a long song. I think it's like over 8 minutes long. Really nice dramatic intro that's just like kind of drums and kind of dramatic just keys throughout. Really, they come back to that for the outro. Really big dramatic outro. The middle part, which starts about 1.5 minutes in, is your more like typical sort of John Wetton-esque prog rock / pop. You can tell that whatever lessons Wetton learned on these 2 albums, he then took those lessons and turned them into sort of a poppier, more streamlined version of this for Asia. But you can hear little elements of that sort of Asia formula creeping in to like the quote unquote songs, the verse, chorus type stuff. But yeah, Danger Money is good. It's got some interesting points in it. It's got this nice little sort of middle section that builds with synths and has this like building and then release and then building. Nothing really happens. There's no real solo, but it's just kind of this nice atmospheric prog vibe. Pretty okay start to the album. Not a bad song, Danger Money. The song itself is okay, but like the playing around and by song, I mean the verse, chorus, like vocal stuff. The next song, Rendezvous, is kind of a Wetton ballad. If you know John Wetton, you know what a ballad is. You probably know what a Wetton ballad sounds like. Kind of comforting, little mid-tempo vibe. It's not completely so, but it's got definitely a chiller vibe. And then you get The Only Thing She Needs, which is really herky-jerky, percussion-driven, prog indulgence. Absolutely fantastic. Some great middle parts, super long synth solo in the middle that's fantastic. Side B opens up with Scissors Palace Blues. Another really great opening with like big drums, some spacey synths, really moody stuff. We drop into a somewhat of a lighter groove, into like a okay pop rock vibe, a proggy pop rock vibe. Some nice violin on here from Eddie. Nothing to Lose, I think, was a hit single, very radio friendly. You can kind of see the Asia seeds being planted. And then we close out with Carry No Cross, which starts off with like a chiller vibe for about a minute and a half, and then that drops into a slightly bigger, almost like 73 era King Crimson type ballad. That kind of like, something you'd find on maybe a Lark's Tongue or the other one around that time that's not Red, that's Starless in the Bible Black, maybe one of those kind of mellotron driven like ballad vibes. Not exactly sounds like that, but we're flirting with that energy. And then we get a nice, more energetic passage that is synths, a nice little piano focus section, a crazy prog section with the synth solo. It's an okay album. I mean, it's in no way bad. The musicians are good. This is definitely, I would say, Eddie Jobson's like baby. It seems like the synth work is the dominant driving energy. I wish there was more violin. But it's not a bad album. It's my second favorite of the two UK, which means my favorite is their debut, which came out in 1978. Right from the beginning, like, it's the Bill Bruford drum sound is there. It's identifiable, like the fills he does, everything Bruford does. To me, this is a Bruford Jobson album. The Yamaha, that famous Yamaha keyboard synth thing, came out right around this time. So you got a lot of really cheesy, kind of dated synthesizer sounds. But the playing is fantastic. You can just tell this is a product of the late 70s. Holdsworth, we need way more Holdsworth on here. His style of guitar playing, I think, works very well with these other musicians, because Wet and Space playing is kind of big and fat and demands attention. Jobson's doing everything on violin and synth. Bruford has, that Bruford, very intricate. It can be very busy, but at the same time cannot be busy. Bruford's kind of all over the place. And Holdsworth guitar playing is just, it is this weird kind of spurts of weird energy, and it's always dramatic and it's always kind of tense, but he has the ability to just shred, and we just need more Alan Holdsworth on here. I think this would be a better album. But a lot of these songs, you can see where like Wetton would learn from this and learn to like not indulge in the proggy elements as much and drop those only occasionally to, have the success that Asia would have in like the early 80s. I'm probably going to do Asia next just because why not? I do like a couple of those albums. But this album opens up with In the Dead of the Night, which kind of, the keyboards are really the only problem with this, but it's got this really nice, tight prog rock groove to it that works really well. The Bruford fills are crazy and all over the place. We get some strong rock and prog touches throughout this whole thing. The only thing that it's the keyboards. The keyboards just kind of dated. But at the end, we get this nice little keyboard sequence. It's kind of like that kind of spacey and all over the place. And that kind of segues into the next song, which is By the Light of Day. This one has like a kind of a twinkling keyboard star. Then the vocals come in and we kind of build up in like this chill vibe with like Jobson's violin coming in. This one also has that sort of 73 era Mellotron type KC ballady vibe. And then after this then goes in to this really, it's called Presto Vivace, Vivace, and Reprise. We essentially will end up with a reprise of In the Dead of the Night at the end of this. We have this very Main Street Electrical Parade Disney synth sound. If you grew up going to Disneyland because you lived in Southern California and it was relatively cheap back in the day, and you know the sound of the Main Street Electrical Parade, and you just, anytime you hear anything that's reminiscent of it, that's all you can think of. Yeah, that's what happens with this song for me. The reprise is kind of cool just because that opening section of In the Dead of the Night is pretty awesome, and then they do that, go back into the song. So the first three songs are essentially one long extended epic. I kind of think this whole album works better if it is just indexed as one long bid, eccentric epic, prog epic. I think breaking it up into 3 little songs undercuts the prog awesomeness of each of the songs. I don't know, just from a presentation standpoint, plating matters. But the return, when we go back into the opening song, it works. It kind of makes the opening song a little better. And also, I think it's probably one of the best parts of this song. And then we get a song called 30 Years, which has this really slow start with like keyboard washes, like just these like synth waves. Holdsworth is doing some nice playing for a while. This goes on for like 3.5 minutes. Then we get a drop into like a not too rushed song, a pretty careful mid-tempo song. We get some proggy changes throughout it, another Holdsworth solo. A very measured and unambitious prog number for a quote-unquote supergroup that has members of King Crimson and members of Yes and members of, well, Jethro Tull eventually, and Soft Machine. Just seems like this needs to be a little more ambitious in its progness. It's just flirting with progginess, and it kind of makes it work, you know, in a weird way, because you're like, okay, they're just like taking their time. But being that this is really their only album together, you're like, go for it harder, man. Chase this dream. They don't. Alaska opens up with like 2.5 minutes of just proggy, atmospheric, floating around, slow building energy. Then we drop into a song that's kind of moody, has some keyboard sounds that are questionable. We get like 2 minutes of a song of just prog instrumentation. And this is all just setting up the next song, which is Time to Kill. And then Time to Kill. The lyrics seem to be about living in Alaska. So this ominous synth like laden opening, I think, is meant to set literally it's like the opening of a movie where like, hey, we're in this cold, stark, you know, place where there's nobody here that you might not want to live in. And then the next song, Time to Kill, the lyrics are maybe being about stuck in Alaska and you got a lot of time to kill. It's kind of an upbeat, fun, dynamic pop prog number. A really cool middle proggy solo section with nice violin in there. And then the last 2 songs are 2 of the longer songs on the album. And the songs themselves don't do much, but anytime we get like a proggy middle section or we like indulge in our prog tendencies, I think it works. Nevermore, we get some like acoustic shredding by Holdsworth early on. Vocals come in just over a minute. Very ballady vibe. The song itself just doesn't do much for me. But then we get this like, we get a chance for Holdsworth gets to solo for a while as the energy picks up. We get a really weird sounding Jobson synth solo. We get this nice spacey breakdown. And then we get this final build into the end of the song. The middle section is kind of cool, but the song itself just kind of doesn't do anything for me. And then the last song is Mental Medication, which also starts with like this chill, like Holdsworth centric start. Vocals come in, we get some prog pop rock energy, some more crazy synth work. The song itself is not that interesting, but anytime the musicians as instrumentalists get their chance to strut their stuff, it's a win. We get some more Holdsworth. We get some really high-speed prog weirdness where we're kind of all over the place, some really like proggy type runs. We get this nice this like funky kind of bass-driven section where Holdsworth gets a chance to solo. We end up back in the song. The lyrics are kind of just your generic wet and proggy type lyrics, or maybe they're poetic, maybe they're not. Maybe they mean something. Obviously they do, but they're not that hard-hitting. It is my favorite. Album number 1, UK, their debut, is my favorite of the 2, but I do think it is, for this group of musicians, maybe a little underwhelming. I know this is a much beloved album by prog fans, but to me, if they had done more albums, I think they would become maybe a little more ambitious, maybe they would try more things, maybe be more experimental. It just feels too safe at times. It feels too much like, you can tell that, you know, it doesn't really feel like Wetton's project. It feels like Eddie Jobson's project more than anything, just because of the overabundance of synths and the experimentation with synths and, you know, the use of violin. And if there's any other musician that seems to really like direct the direction of this album, it's Bruford's drumming. Holdsworth is underused and Wetton just seems there, but Wetton's contributions, it really does seem like he's going to figure something out, and then he's going to make it huge, in 4 years with, the debut of Asia's first album. So, yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts. Their first album is my favorite. Their second album is my second favorite. Neither of them are bad. I think the second one's pretty strong and pretty enjoyable, but it's something about it's a little bit disappointing. We just need more indulgent stuff, more like chances for Holdworth to stretch out. I think Jobson does a good job representing, but yeah. And if you don't like Wetton's voice, you're not going to like either album because it's Wetton's being very Wetton. It's got a very identifiable sound. But yeah, interested to see what your take is, that the people who normally watch these videos and comment. This is one of those I did not get around to till later in life. I'd always heard about it. By the time I got around to it, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. This was just a little too mainstream, and I wanted something wilder. It's got its moments. It's grown on me over the years. The musicianship is fantastic. I mean, these musicians are amazing. It's just the songs don't quite bring the epicness that one would hope for. But yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts in UK. I think I'm done with all of Eddie Jobson's side projects. I think I got them all covered. But yeah, so anyways, might do some Asia at some point. Who knows? All right. I've only listened to the first 2 albums and then I checked out. So I don't even know what those other ones sound like. So may have to do that. But anyways, I'm rambling. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Peace. Talk to you later.